This is JG Hertzler. You're listening to the official Axanar Podcast.
Welcome to official Axanar Podcast number 66. I'm your host, Keith M. Sedor. From the far reaches of deep space comes a brand new fleet of starships, the Ares class, and its fleet captain, Kelvar Garth. But you know him better as Alec Peters. How are you, Alec?
Good, Keith. How are you doing?
I am awesome. It has been a while since we actually sat down to record an episode of the official Axanar Podcast.
Yeah, did we do one after the November 2021 shoot?
Not do any podcasting in 2022, but there was a lot of Axanar content out there. So I know you were out there with a lot of live video streams and stuff, which are available on YouTube, which is still great content, but it's always great for our audio listeners. People want to get a podcast, listen in their car while they're driving, for us to give them some updates. And updates abound in this episode because you have just completed another one of the Axanar shoots in the Atlanta studio on the bridge of the USS Ares set, correct?
That is correct. It was a 2-day shoot.
Okay.
Day one was all bridge work.
Okay.
And we're basically completing a scene that we already have most of the visual effects for, which is it's called the Icarus maneuver, and it's the first battle you see between Garth and his crew and 2D6s. So in the full feature Axanar script, which of course you're not going to see that movie, this is a scene just like the Vulcan scene.
Okay.
This is a scene from that script, and it's the first time you see Garth and his crew, and they're taking on 2D6s, and it's fun. It was one of the first things I wrote when I wrote Axanar 10 years ago, and it's probably longer than that now. And it was and it's good. And so we had the visual effects, and I was like, why don't we just shoot the bridge scene? I mean, let's just shoot this.
Well, let's talk about that real quick, Alex. I hear Icarus. I think of the Next Gen episode, The Icarus Factor, but I also think of the mythological character of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, got his wings a little singed there. So is there something in a battle where we're getting too close to a star or something in there? I'm wondering. What is the Icarus maneuver?
So the Icarus maneuver it's basically a maneuver where the Ares is engaged in a battle with 2D6s and then goes vertical above them and then dives back into them. So it's kind of like the mythological Icarus. It was just
falling from the sky.
Yeah, falling from the sky, exactly.
That sounds pretty cool. There's a lot in the script from the original Axanar, what was intended to be the feature film, that I think of, like the Battle of the Gas Giant, where the Ares lures a D7 that it clearly is outgunned by into the depths of the gravity well of a gas giant. And it sounds like there's more of Garth's cunning and his prowess, using his intelligence to win these battles, because, 2D6 is not a D7, but it's 2 against 1. That definitely sounds like something that is going to create a lot of drama and a lot of tension.
Yeah, because obviously that's something you have to do, is you have to show that Garth has, he's something special, right? Mm-hmm. So you need to be able to show that. And in both scenes, in both the Icarus maneuver and the Battle of the Gas Giant, you see, Garth doing things that you haven't maybe seen before. It was so interesting. I was watching the video about that it's on the CBS website or Paramount website about Star Trek, about the new Picard episode, where in the episode the Shrike, Amanda Plummer's ship, throws the Helios at the the Titan.
That was pretty wild.
That was pretty wild.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it, and I was watching the video and all, and they were like, "Oh, we need to do something now we've done before." And I was like, "Yeah, well, we kind of did that, but nonetheless, the idea is to do something different, right?"
I like it,
and that's kind of what we do in both those scenes. So we'll wind up finishing the Battle of the Gas Giants, since we have all the VFX for that. Mm-hmm. one thing I can say is we talk about in the script for the next 2 episodes of Axanar. We talk through the Battle of the Gas Giant. Tanaka and Leonov and Xander DeVille and Garth all discuss that battle. So there's
Xander is the helmsman / pilot,
he's the
and
pilot.
Leonov is the chief engineer, and Tanaka is the first officer. Let's talk about Tanaka real quick, because you've actually had to change up actors. You had the very prolific, very famous James Liu originally portraying Commander Tanaka, and he was out for the film shoot that you did back in 2019, but he's not available this go round, and you had to do a lot of reshoots, correct?
Yeah, so we invited James. James was just in the middle of moving to Vancouver from Los Angeles, so he wasn't available for this shoot. So when we're thinking about, I'm like, oh, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to do something like Jonathan Lane did in Interlude, where we basically write Tanaka out of the script, right?
He's on his way to engineering.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I told Jonathan to put that line in. I said, you don't explain where Tanaka is. Why is he not on the bridge? So I said, Garth should say this. And Jonathan was like, okay, sure. And he wrote that in. So that explains it, right? But we didn't want to do that again.
Right.
So I was like, oh, well. And then I remember Vince Canlis, who played the Afrosian Lieutenant Hyrie back in 2019.
Now, all of our diehard Star Trek fans know what an Afrosian is, but for those who are only casually acquainted, if you remember in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, on board the Saratoga, there was a guy who had really cool beard and wispy Fu Manchu kind of mustache. It was that guy, and he also was played by the Federation president,
Kurtwood Smith.
Yes, I love him as an actor. He was so good in the Voyager 2-parter Year of Hell.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
commander,
yeah, Kurtwood Smith. He also did a really good sidebar here. He did a really good limited run series called Worst Week, where he played the father-in-law from a guy who was going to marry his daughter and was trying to impress him, and he was not suffering fools gladly. Kurtwood Smith always plays that kind of character.
Was also in the that 80s show. Is that what it was called? That 70s show?
That 70s show, yep.
That 70s show? Yeah, he's the father in that. So,
and he's actually now back. Is it Netflix or Hulu? One of the online streaming services doing that 90s show.
Right.
But now they play like the grandparents, but the same characters, but now they're older.
Right. Yeah. So no, he's a great actor. He's a really good, very well known, very respected character actor.
So he also played an Afrosian.
Yeah,
and
he played the Afrosian president of the Federation in Star Trek VI.
Yes.
Very effectively. So that was Vince. Vince did that. And so, but Vince is Asian. And so, and he's bald. And we're like, oh, why don't we just use Vince as kind of a quote unquote younger version of James Liu for the bridge scene for Friday's shoot. We're like, that way we have Tanaka on the bridge. So we did that, and it worked great. And we all love Vince. He's so easy to get along with. He's got such a positive attitude, and he's a total pro.
Yeah, I sat with him at length when he was getting his Afrosian makeup put on back in 2019 as I was doing some background recording for the Axanar podcast. And so he was basically a captive audience because he couldn't move while he's getting the makeup put on, but he was really, really good to talk to. And he's definitely professionally loves what he does.
Yeah, he's great. And so we're so happy with his performance on Friday. I went to Mark Edward Lewis, our co-director and editor, and I said, why don't we just have him record all of Tanaka's lines in the interview segment the next day? I said, that's
awesome. I
said, what if James Liu can't do it? Right. Or I said, this way we have it in the can already. And so we did. He did. He came back, and we shot him the next day. So that was good. So that, and we also added the Vulcan captain. What
is the Vulcan captain's name?
It's Captain Arev.
Arev.
And
is that a man or a woman?
That's a female.
Okay.
I mean, it's not written one way or another. It's written for a Vulcan captain, right?
Okay.
But I've always imagined that it was female. And so about 10 days before the shoot, one of my dear friends from acting school, who I honestly haven't talked to in 10 years. So I guess she's not that dear, but she's a great girl, Tina. And Tina had been with me at the Howard Fine School, which Howard Fine's one of the top acting coaches in Hollywood. Chris Pine's acting coach and Bradley Cooper's, and she was, and she's a professional actress here in Atlanta. And I've been trying to reach her just because I see her online on Facebook, and so I've been and Instagram, and I sent her a couple of messages. I never heard back from her, and all of a sudden, 10 days before the shoot, she's like, "Oh my God, Alec, I never used Facebook. I just got your messages. How the hell are you?" And I was like, "Great." We start chatting. I'm like, "Hey, do you want to come play Star Trek? Do you want to be an extra?" And then I'm like, "You know what? You might work as the Vulcan." So I said, "Here, I'm going to send you the lines." So I send her the lines, and she's very used to doing audition tapes.
Okay.
Which is the way most auditions are done these days. So she shoots me off a video, and I'm like, okay. And I start working with her, and she sends me another video, and I work with her some more. She sends me another video. And I said, "Yeah, you're getting there, Tina." I said, "Tell you what, I'm going to turn you over to our director." So I turned her over to Mark Edward Lewis, and he continued to work with her during the week. I mean, this is a week before the shoot. And so she came out, and she was awesome.
Now, let me ask you, I'm curious because, Vulcans have stereotypically had that bowl cut. And so I'm wondering, does she have the Vulcan bowl cut, or does she have a longer hair like Talera?
No, it's not a bowl cut, but she has bangs.
Okay.
And it's kind of a bob. It was great. It worked great. She's got a great look, and she's got a great attitude. And, it was really interesting to work with her and explain, because actors who aren't familiar with Vulcans are like, "Oh, those are the ones who don't have emotions." And it's not,
they suppress their emotions. They
right.
still have them. They're beneath the surface.
Yeah, exactly.
Like your emotions beneath the surface.
Yeah. And so I said, Gary, and I made her watch Gary Graham in Prelude. And then I had her watch the Strange New Worlds episode with T'Pring. And we talked about it. I said, Gary Graham had the same comments about it when he started. When he got cast as Saval, he went to Rick Berman and said, "Okay, so these guys don't have emotions." And Berman was like, "Nope, that's not it. They're probably more emotional than humans. The difference is they don't show it. So you have to play it where the emotions are all just bubbling below the surface, but you never let it out." And so she watched a lot, did a lot of research, and yes, I think she's probably a little more kind of emotional than you might be used to.
Okay.
With a Vulcan. There were times where she was too low, there was times too shy. So we're trying to find the take where we really like what she's got, right? Because she's kind of plays in that range.
Well, they're not all cookie cutter, they're still
exactly.
people, sure.
Exactly. And so, but we loved her. We just loved her. I said to, afterwards, I said to Mark, I said, Mark, she is going to be the breakout character, just like Sonya
Vulcan
was.
Captain, what's her name again?
Arev. Arev, Captain Arev.
And what is she? What ship is she captain of?
She is captain of the Taval. Ship.
That is one of the Ares class vessels.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. So we shot her. We shot Vince Canlis as Tanaka.
Okay.
We shot Rob Pralgo as April.
Okay.
And
he's great. I love him as April.
He's awesome.
I'm not thrilled about the liberties that New Trek took with recasting Robert April. When we, animated or not, apocryphal or not, we already got to look at what Robert April was supposed to look like.
Right.
So unless there's another Starfleet admiral just happens to have the same name, that ain't it.
Yeah, you're right. So we thought about that because
Rob looks like he could be a younger version of the guy we saw in Yesteryear.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. No,
I'm sorry, not Yesteryear. The Counterclock incident.
You're right, Counterclock incident. Right, And he already played April in First Frontier, the other Star Trek fan film. Which Vince Canlis was in as well.
Okay.
And so, we thought about it. I was like, oh, wow, we should at least, I at least had to go through the intellectual exercise. Now that Strange New Worlds had come out, of, okay, do we recast April? Right? That you had to go through that exercise.
Right.
And my decision was no. We're kind of old school Trek, right? It's and what we're seeing in Strange New Worlds, whatever it is, it may be an alternate timeline, whatever. I'm like, I'm not convinced. I'm going to honor what we saw in the animated series.
I'm glad you did.
And that would have meant removing Rob Pralgo from the production, and I wasn't willing to do that. And
no,
so
when you introduced me to him back in 2019, and then you put him in costume, I believed every bit that he was Captain Robert April.
Yeah, the guy's a pro, and he he's awesome. I mean, we have Mark Edward Lewis went and took he took everything we shot. We have now shot 10 out of the 17 actors, and I should also mention we also shot Adrienne Wilkinson as Corax, the intelligence officer, who's another. She's awesome. She's fantastic. You know her from Star Trek Renegades. She was the lead actress in Star Trek Renegades. She was also Xena's daughter in Xena Warrior Princess. So those 4 actors, we took those 4 actors.
Now, Corax is an Antosian, correct?
That is correct.
A shapeshifter.
Yes.
I remember I remember the very first time you said Corax. I thought you meant the Klingon in the bar on K7 in Trouble with Tribbles.
Right. No.
You're like, no, that's Corax with a K.
That's right. That's Corax with a K. So we have 4 actors from this shoot, 3 actors from the 2021 shoot, and then we were able to salvage 2 actors from the 2019 shoot.
Which 2?
So one of them I can't tell you because it's a surprise.
Okay.
But and another, let's just say he's talking about the Enterprise engines, and then another character is another, and then Leonov. We were able to salvage some of the Leonov stuff as well.
Okay.
But it was interesting.
Now let's talk about that. I'm sorry. Tell me what's interesting.
Oh, so and then there's one other actor where I can't talk about, but we basically have 10 actors in the can. So the thing about and we've talked about the 2019 shoot. The challenge with that was
what was wrong with the 2019 shoot? Was it a technical thing? Was it a stylistic thing? What was unusable about the footage that was shot? Because that was a pretty productive weekend.
Yeah, it was a productive weekend. So we basically have all these.
To say nothing how awesome Craft Services was.
Craft Services was amazing.
Did you do that again this time?
No, we did not.
Okay.
No, because we didn't have such a big crew, and it wasn't. It wouldn't have been economically feasible.
Okay, so what was wrong technically or stylistically with what you had recorded from the 2019 shoot?
So there were a couple problems with the 2019 shoot, and the first one. I think the first one was after we finished that shoot. That was October of 2019. The next springtime, I had to fire our director.
Okay.
And just for inappropriate and unprofessional behavior. And after firing him, he filed a fraudulent copyright on the script in order to prevent us from using the footage. It was just basically a very, immature and a move. Basically in Hollywood, when you leave a production, you leave quietly and you don't burn any bridges. It's the first rule of Hollywood, right? Don't burn any bridges. Just you leave for quote unquote creative differences, right? You hear it all the time. This guy did not want to do that. And he just wanted to basically be an asshole to us. So we're fighting. We are still fighting that in court. And although we're doing very well, I fully expect that his fraudulent copyright is going to be thrown out. It's still a pain in the ass. Now, the second issue was And I first heard this from Jonathan Lane 2 years ago when Jonathan Lane did that wonderful 8-minute kind of trailer / behind the scenes video of the shoot. And Jonathan was like, Alec, you're not going to be happy with this footage. And I that's what I said. And he said, yeah, it's not up to par. It's not what you expect.
Okay.
And when we finally started looking at it last year, we're like, oh my God, this guy just did not know how to shoot. And a lot of the problem was he thought he knew better than everyone. And he had all these criticisms of Prelude to Axanar that were not, let's just say, I don't know anyone who agrees with him.
Okay.
But they affected the way he shot it. And it was, just his, I personally feel that his technique for directing was bullshit. And it was amateurish. And he had no clue what he was doing, in my opinion. And it resulted in footage that was not, like, we couldn't use it. If we used that footage, people would go, oh, that's not exactly what I've come to expect from Axanar.
Right.
So we basically made the executive decision to reshoot everything. We're like, look, we're not going to, let's assume we can't use most of that footage because he filed this fraudulent copyright. So, what footage we could use was stuff that was in my script before he ever appeared on the production.
Okay.
I can't claim that. And that's how we got the 2 actors, the footage that we're using, laying off in this other one. But
that had to be a great disappointment to have had all that work and all that time, all those people, all the money you spent on that production to only wind up and find out that our net result is close to zero, if not zero. But I'm thinking, if I'm looking at the entire timeline here between then and now, there's some silver linings. Is Jeff Fagan still your DP?
Jeff Fagan is our DP. So we had,
you got that Red Komodo Red Komodo camera system.
Yeah, and we had 2 of them on this last shoot.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so basically, after the disaster of the last director, I basically had to I did a lot of thinking about, that's basically the second time I've had a disastrous relationship with a director.
Okay.
And I just said, these, and both of them were the same thing. Both of these guys, the problem with the guy that I fired was he wanted to use Axanar to jumpstart his own quote unquote film studio, which is since disappeared off the face of the earth. He wasn't interested in Axanar. He was interested in using Axanar for his own benefit. And I finally said, you know what? I'm not interested in bringing anyone in to direct who wants to make Axanar
a stepping stone.
I want someone who wants to make Axanar because they love the work.
Sure.
They love Star Trek, because they want to do something and be part of something that's,
and before you and I even met, and I saw Axanar for the very first time. I'd seen fan films. The closest thing I saw to a professional fan film was the Starship Exeter, the Tresorian intersection.
Which is wonderful.
That plays like a TOS episode. I won't go off on a tangent about that. But of all the other fan productions I've seen, which looked like a bunch of fat 40-year-olds, playing dress up with ill-fitting costumes, going pew-pew with their buddies on the weekend, I'm like, okay, great. You're having fun, but if you make me cringe, it's not really Star Trek. It's you playing Star Trek. Well, and when I watched Prelude to Axanar back in 2014, was it?
Yep.
I went, and this is right around the time that Enterprise had ended, so we were going into a Trek drought, and I was like, oh my God, this is real Trek. I want more of this. I want to open up a vein and mainline this. This is so good, And then the lawsuit happened, and this and that, and the whole production got so down. It's like the better it got, the more slow it got, and now we're kind of ramping up to where there's a finish line in sight. How do you feel about the fact that you've got this shoot done with a more professional DP and a more professional director, and a better camera system, to say nothing else of the fact that with Vince Canlis being a bit more accessible as Tanaka. And then you've got another shoot out in LA in the spring. How are you feeling about how all this is shaping up?
I've got to say that the past 60 days have been nothing short of amazing.
Tell me.
For Axanar. So first of all, I'll say that, getting back to what we said before, when I was after firing our former director, I had to think about, okay, how do I want this? I'm not going to trust anyone else, because part of the problem with the last guy was he never looked through the camera. He never bothered to see how things were being composed. He was always so interested in being part of the scene as this interviewer, which was ridiculous. And he was stepping over people's lines. And it was J.G. Hertzler hated him. And he said, that's not the way actors work, which is true.
Did JG come back for the most recent shoot?
So he was in the November 2021 shoot. So
okay. So you have new footage with him though too, right?
Yeah. So he totally reshot his stuff, and he was the first one he was the first person on the November 2021 shoot that we shot. And
now is he a talking head again, or do you actually have him on the bridge?
No. It's the interview scenes, right?
Okay.
These are the interview scenes. So part of what I was, what I had to come to grips with was, and now I'm talking to Mark Edward Lewis and Jeff Fagan, who had been a camera operator in 2019. I had really gotten to know Jeff, and Jeff had done some other stuff with us. And I was really convinced that Jeff could be our DP. He's young, but he's very technical and very into his craft. And I absolutely knew it. So what I did was I approached Ted Brunetti, who is one of my acting coaches in LA. And Ted,
you have a lot of respect for Ted. I've heard you say nothing but wonderful things about this guy.
Ted is legendary. Ted was the right hand of Uta Hagen, who is one of the most famous acting coaches of all time. She's in the Lee Strasberg stratosphere, Meisner. I mean, she is big time. We had to read her book. Howard Fine makes everyone read her book. That's how important she is. And Ted Brunetti started with her and studied with her in New York. It was her right hand for years. And then, and because of that, Ted was his first major acting coaching job, because he was a performer on Broadway and everything, was coaching George C. Scott and Jack Lemmon in the TV adaptation of Inherit the Wind, which those guys had performed on Broadway. And since then, he was James Gandolfini's acting coach, and he's worked with a lot. Ted is amazing, and I knew him because he worked with Howard Fine in L.A. And so Ted is amazing, and he's just the most fun, decent acting coach. I mean, a human being and acting coach. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I said, I talked to Mark Edward Lewis about it. I said, Mark, look, I don't trust anyone to get me the look of Prelude outside of Milton, who did Prelude, who's, he's off doing other things now.
Milton Santiago.
I said, or you. I said, so what I'm going to do is, I said, I'm going to let Ted direct the actors because he's amazing. I want you to take the camera work end of the director off of his shoulders. I'm going to split the director into two jobs: performance and camera. I said, you focus on the camera and get us that look. And he was like, yeah, I can do that. And then I went to Ted and I said, Ted, I'm breaking this. I told him I wanted him to direct. I said, however, you're not going to be in charge of the camera. I got someone. And he goes, that's fine. I don't want to be. I was like, perfect. This is a match made in heaven. So when we did our shoot in 2021, and we didn't do it at the studio, we did it at a green screen studio that Dana Wagner's wife, Allison, she teaches at one of the local high schools that has this huge film studio. And we shot it there. And before J.G. Hertzler was up first, and Mark Edward Lewis takes me to Video Village and says, here you go. And he had a split screen. He said, on the left is Prelude, on the right is Today. And they look the same.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's what I said. I said, this is perfect. So we did that. We shot J.G. Hertzler. We shot Raj Kala's Commodore Singh. And we shot Rob Hayes as Xander DeVille.
Okay.
And the shoot was, everyone felt the shoot was a 10 out of 10. Everyone
That's
was
awesome.
Like, it was perfect. So then we were going to do the LA shoot next, because all our special effects makeup, it was going to be like 8 actors, a 3-day shoot. It was going to be about a $50,000, $50,000 to $60,000 shoot. And I was kind of struggling to raise the money, and you know, and I said, you know what? Why don't we do? I said to Mark and Jeff, I said, because that's kind of like my team, my core team. It's Mark and Jeff and myself, the Little Triumpher. I said, why don't we shoot Atlanta first?
Okay.
Let's get 3 more actors on film. Let's do a bridge scene that we can cut, because we already have the visual effects. We could do this real cheap and put out a scene, right? I said, why don't we just do Atlanta first?
Okay.
And I said, we can do Atlanta for 15, 20 grand. And they were like, okay, let's do it. So we flip-flopped the shoots.
Okay.
We did Atlanta first, and then we're going to do LA in May or June. And the great thing was there, so we did it, and it went off great. And we were supposed to do 3 actors. It was supposed to be Rob Pralgo as April, Adrian Wilkinson as Corax, and myself as Garth, right?
Okay.
What happened was we added Captain Arev, the Vulcan captain, and then we added Tanaka.
Okay.
And I said, and that's not, you can't do 5 actors in one day, especially with Garth, who's got a ton of lines.
Right.
So I was like, forget it. I'm out. We can do me later. There's no rush to do me.
You can make yourself available anytime.
Anytime. So, yeah, Jeff flies up, Mark comes down, we do it. Big, it's easy. And they were like, great. So we shot 4 actors. We now have 10 of 17 in the cam. And now, before we even get to LA, Mark then takes what we've shot. We now have 10 actors we've shot. He now takes that and puts an assembly together of episode 4. So Prelude's episode 3. We're doing episodes 4 and 5, right? 2 15-minute episodes. So he takes episode 4 and puts it together as what we call an assembly, right? Chooses his selects, drops them into a timeline, takes slugs, still images, right, of all the other actors we put temporary soundtrack in, temporary voiceover in, and we lay it all out. And now we get to see it. We've seen it we have the script, but now we get to see how does it work.
Sure.
Right? It was 21 minutes long. And we're like, okay, well, that's not going to work, right? It's got to be 15.
Right.
So we start cutting, we start mixing, and Mark and I are on, we did like a 3-hour Zoom meeting, and he's got the timeline up. So I see his screen, and we're cutting, and we're going, yeah, that works. That doesn't work. No, it needs to go. And we're just moving things around, dropping, we dropped some the past performances in, and we're just at an impasse. We're like, the Battle of the Gas Giant, as cool as it is, it doesn't work.
Sure.
It just doesn't work. It's not, the stakes aren't high. It doesn't drive the story forward. It's a great piece. It's a fantastic piece in the full-length feature script. But when you're doing 15 minutes, it has to be tight and impactful, and the stakes have to be high. This whole episode is about everything but up to the Battle of Axanar. Right. The D7s come out. They're kicking your ass. How are we going to respond? We're in panic mode. But right. And, it gets back to, what they always say about how do you, about screenwriting. What do you do? 3-act structure. The cat runs up the tree. Act 2, you light the tree on fire. Act 3, you rescue the cat.
Okay.
That's kind of, and so we're like, this is Act 2. I mean, this is right. This is light the tree on freaking fire, right? and so that's what our focus has to be. And the Battle of the Gas Giant doesn't light the tree on fire.
Okay.
It's just, so we're like, okay, that goes. And now we're down to like 16 minutes. We'll get it down to 15. And
that's a shame, because I've seen the animatics for the Battle of the Gas Giant, but I totally understand if it doesn't drive the story forward, it's not a mechanism for telling a good story.
Yeah, and so that we have it all. You'll see it. You'll just see it as outtakes on the Blu-ray, right? Just kind of like Icarus. These are things that are not core to the getting the next 2 episodes out.
Well, you know the scene I want to see, Alec.
Which scene do you want to see?
Well, when in Prelude, Garth makes reference to one of 2 things would happen. The Klingons would show up, or the transporters start blowing out. And I want to see the transporters start blowing out. I want to see flash pots on the transporter platform. When they pull the levers down, you hear the boom, and then just like I'm watching the Doomsday Machine. I want that scene. I don't care if it's a deleted scene in the Blu-ray. I want that scene.
Well, we'll see what we could do. We'll see what we do. But so the interesting thing was, you move things around, you cut things, and what we wound up doing was rewriting the script. So the script we had that we shot, right now, only 10 to 17 actors are shot. We now put the assembly together. And now I have to go back after Mark and I did this 3 hours of work. I have to go back and I have to rewrite the script.
Oh my goodness.
I basically put the assembly up on the right, and on the left, I put the script up, and I start, was that, I retyped the script where I need to. We had added lines because some things didn't make sense. So we need someone to say this. So we changed them. And then there were things that, I'm like, Garth doesn't need to say this line. Tanaka can say this line. Korax can say this line. Or this actor, and thinking of the actors we're going to have. And one of the things you also do is, in the beginning, Garth has more lines than anyone, right? Mm-hmm. Which is not the way it was in Prelude.
And that's something very interesting about Garth and about you as the head of this production. I've noticed over time, and as we at Computer Talk Radio have gotten to know you and become friends of the show and friends of your production, that as we get greater glimpses into your background processes, I've noticed your desire to make Axanar, all facets of it, as good as it can be. You've been very willing. You've had a great generosity in giving up lines for yourself, for your character, in favor of giving them to someone else to drive the story better. And I've noticed that over the years that this production's gone on, you've done that consistently. There was a point in time when you were actually considering giving up the role of Garth to have somebody, a full-time professional actor, play him. And people were like, no, you did such a great job with this. You need to be Garth. But I've noticed the generosity you've had in not hogging, for lack of a better term, all the dialogue for yourself, just because this is, Garth's story. That it's kind of like when there's praise, there's enough to go around, and you've done a lot of that.
Well, yeah, thank you. I appreciate you noticing that. Because that's the, I think there was a great balance struck in Prelude, in that you're taking an amateur in myself, right, and surrounding him with 5 professional actors of note, right? And so going into Prelude, my goal was, oh my God, don't let me embarrass myself, right? I don't mind being the worst actor on screen. I can't be bad, right?
Sure.
And fortunately, between a good director, Christian Gossett did a wonderful job directing the actors and directing me, and putting in a lot of work. And thanks to all my acting coaches, Richard Hatch and Howard Fine and Ted Brunetti, I was able to, do a passable job in Prelude. And so this time, you look at the script and, you can generate reports from the script that tell you how many lines everyone has. And I see my having more lines than anyone. I'm like, oh, I don't like that, right? Because I don't want more lines than anyone. Plenty of lines to go around. And you get to the point where you're like, okay, so one, I don't want to be the center of attention. I don't want it to be obvious that, he's the quote unquote star. No, I'm one of an ensemble, right? There's 17 actors. So let's make sure we spread everything out. So Garth has, no more lines than anyone else.
It's Garth's story, but he's not the star of the show.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really important. And then you're also cognizant of, well, who would I rather hear say this line, Alec Peters or X? When you're dealing with some amazing actors. And I would rather have X say that line. As a matter of fact, when we were rewriting it, we were changing the ending. We're like, oh, we need to raise the stakes here. I mean, literally on the last page of dialogue, for episode 4, we're like, okay, yeah. And Mark was the one who made this point to me. He's like, I like this line, but we haven't raised the stakes enough. People need to know that it could be the end of the Federation. I was like, I got it. All right. So we write a line, and then we're like, well, who should say this line? Right. And I think Mark had suggested someone, and I said, no, it should be this guy if we get this actor to play this guy, right?
Okay.
And he's like, oh, yeah, that'll be amazing. And
What was the line?
I don't even – it's something about it could be the end of the Federation, right?
Okay.
It's something, again, you're lighting the tree on fire. So it's like, make sure you got a flamethrower. And we really kind of started crafting it and using all the leverage we had. Who's playing off of who? What do you? And then you'd have you have someone like Sonya, and you need to you want to both with Sonya and with Travis. You want to take the characters that they developed in Prelude, right? And really, it's because JG developed the Sam character. I just wrote the lines, and Christian helped re-edit that, and Sonya and Kate did Sonya, and they really gave life to these characters. So now you want to give them lines that take those characters and give fans more of what they want, right?
For me, it was not just the line, but the direction, which I remember you told us in a previous episode, the direction that you'd given to Gary Graham. Don't push the pink. You talked about an Andorian acquaintance said, don't push the pink skins to the thin ice. And then for the diehard Enterprise fans, we knew he was talking about Shran. And everybody loves Jeffrey Combs. So that was one of the best Easter eggs inside Prelude. Yeah,
and that's a perfect example. Like, and it's my favorite story. Listen, it's my favorite story from the Prelude shoot, which is that Gary was delivering that line, and he did a couple takes of that line, and he just wasn't getting where I felt he needed to be with that line. And so I went over to Christian Gossett, who was directing, and I said, I whispered in Christian's ear, because as producer, it's not my job to talk to the actors generally.
Right.
So I went over to Christian and I whispered in his ear and I said, tell him it's Shran. So Christian did, I don't know if he was a fan of Enterprise, but he goes over and tells Gary, and I walk away and he tells Gary, it's Shran you're talking about. And Gary turned to me, this knowing look, and smiles at me and nods at me.
Like, I got it.
He got it. He goes, I got it. And the next take, bam, nails it. Nails it. I mean, it was like night and day. It was so good. And that is the take you see in Prelude. And because that is the actor's craft, right? That is what Gary, all these actors do so well, is that once he knew who he was talking about, once he knew who the acquaintance was, it informs his performance on a subconscious level, right? Because he's not trying anything. He's just like, now I know who I'm talking about. And it comes across in his performance. And so you want to see that in everyone. So we want to see a Sonya that's a bit of a wise ass. I mean, right? We know she's the queen bitch whore and she doesn't mind telling you that. Well, that tells you a lot about Sonya. Absolutely. And so this time we play that up. This time we kind of play up her, it's funny that she's the cowboy, not Sam Travis, right?
Right.
And so we play that up a little. We play JG dropped the line in, honing back to his Texas roots. Like he wanted, it's kind of like he's got a line kind of like drip drop in Prelude, right?
Mm-hmm.
He brings something to the table that wasn't in the script that he's like, I want to say this. And we talked about it. I'm like, go for it. So that's what we need to put our effort into, not more lines for Garth. We need more lines for all these amazing actors who surround Garth. And in a way, you serve the story, you serve the idea that they all had respect for Garth, and and he was, he excelled at war, right? And so, it kind of gets back to like show, don't tell. Here you're showing by the other actors showing their respect for Garth. Garth doesn't have to convince you of anything. And he's a bit humble and a bit, he was a bit damaged by the war, right? How is anyone who's a captain who's in charge of the lives of hundreds of people not at the end of the war somewhat damaged by what's gone on, right?
That totally makes sense.
And if you, when you watch the interviews in Band of Brothers or in Saving Private Ryan, you see that in them. You see that all these men were somehow affected by what went on. So so that was kind of the process, and we feel really good about it. And what it's done now by doing the Atlanta shoot first, now we've rewritten the script. Now we go to LA with new lines for people.
And the purpose of LA, I know you're going to be shooting on green screen. What is the fundamental purpose of the LA shoot that you are not able to accomplish in Atlanta?
So it's all the special effects makeup. So in LA, and the good news is because we did 4 actors instead of 3 in Atlanta, we shaved 1 full day off the LA shoot. So the LA shoot now is 2 days, 6 actors. Those 6 actors are 2 Andorians, 1 Klingon, and 1 Vulcan. So one day we'll do 2 Andorians and a human. One day we'll do a Vulcan, a Klingon, and a human.
And these people have all been cast?
The Andorians have not been cast yet. Everyone else has been cast. And that fact, yesterday was a huge day casting. And and I think everyone's going to be real excited about it. So that is what the LA shoot will be. Once we put that in the can, then we come back to Atlanta. We do myself. We're going to do some pickups with Tanaka. And Vince has already said, I'm back. And if we have to do any other pickup shots.
Now, the LA shoot on green screen, will that be more of the Talking Heads documentary style, or will that be like a walk and talk like the Axanar Vulcan scene was?
Nope, it's all documented. So this is all just like Prelude. So we are making the next 2 episodes of the 4 Years War documentary, and this is episodes 4 and 5. Which
will we see a trailer based upon the Atlanta shoot prior to the LA shoot?
Can't say.
Okay.
Can't say. We haven't
figured that out. Teaser?
We may. We may. We'll see. We'll see. Remember, we don't have anything composited. There are no backgrounds.
Gotcha.
It's very, very rough. If anything, we'll probably see something a little more like what Jonathan Lane did a couple of years ago. What he did in 2020.
Sure.
Where
speaking of Jonathan Lane, real quick, because we've already been going for a while, so it's going to be wrapping up soon. But everybody who loves Axanar really, really loved the work he did on Interlude, including all of the people who've worked on previous incarnations of Axanar. Do you foresee any other fan films like Interlude, where they shoot another aspect of the Axanar story?
Well, listen. Yeah, Josh Irwin, who does Avalon Universe, has already said he's going to do a 4 Years War story in the Avalon Universe.
Really?
So he wanted it. He's basically kind of telling the Interlude story in the Avalon Universe. That's his goal. And Crystal is going to play the captain.
Okay.
Of course, Crystal's a trained actress and has done some great work. So he was very excited to work with her. So that will shoot. I think he's planning on shooting in October of this year.
Okay.
On our sets at Ares Studios.
Oh, terrific.
So yeah, and which is appropriate since Crystal is the president of Ares Studios.
Wonderful.
So so that's the next project, and I know we are also talking about a project for later this year, early next year, which would be Vance Major, who does the Menard series.
Yep.
Along with the character of Mason, played by Tyler Donovan of Avalon Universe.
Okay.
Along with Garth. So the three of those characters in this three-way crossover, which we're all really excited about. And Vance is going to write that script, and we're going to shoot it. We'll see if it's a bottle episode or how we exactly handle it. I could easily see us shooting in Arkansas as well.
Okay.
But I'm so I'm excited about that. I'm excited to get Garth into it. Because Garth's made a couple appearances in Vance's films.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
And I love Vance, and we get along great, and so does Josh and I, and I love Tyler. He does a great job. So so there's more to come.
Excellent. Well, Alec, tell everybody where they can find you online and in social media.
So the best places to find us are on Axanar.com. Which is our blog, our website and our blog. There's a ton of information there. Our YouTube channel. So just look up Axanar on YouTube and you'll find our channel. That we always post video updates and other cool stuff, and our live streams that happen at least once a week. Those are the best places. If you're looking on Twitter, it's at Axanar Film. And you can always reach me, Alec, at Axanar.com, or look me up on Facebook and message me there. I'm always happy to chat with fans.
That's awesome. And for the fans of Axanar, or for people who are coming across Axanar for the very first time, nearly a decade later, if you want to see all that there is to see of Axanar, you will look on YouTube for Prelude to Axanar, Axanar Vulcan Scene, and Axanar Interlude.
Yep, that's all on our Axanar YouTube channel. Also, make sure you go to Axanar.com, click on the link up top for the newsletter, and sign up for our newsletter, because that's the best way to find out what's happening on Axanar, what's happening at Ares Studios, and really stay informed with what's going on.
Great. Well, we will do this again in the not too distant future, Alec. I'm sure that we will do this probably immediately before or sometime directly after the LA shoot. But in the meantime, you've been listening to Official Axanar Podcast number 66. We'll catch you next time.
Live long and prosper.